This is the tale of a woman with jet black hair and pale skin. She could easily be mistaken for a beautiful woman until you notice the long slit that stretches from her mouth up to her ears. Her name is Miroku-san. She is known as the slit-mouthed woman, but she isn't entirely human. As an urban legend, she thrives on the fear of her victims and the strength of her rumors to survive. Upon her sight, she can make anyone scream in fear. Like this morning when she presents herself in all her horror, mouth stretched wide. He calmly shuts his book and rates her a mere 20. Miroku slouches in defeat, prompting him to recommend a change in her routine. He advises that using the same scare tactics becomes predictable, suggesting she introduce some variation to satisfy her customers, referring to the victims. She nervously corrects him, stating he's not a customer but more like her fiancé. Sano Koichi, a 17-year-old boy, is destined to be Miroku's husband. Despite her terrifying appearance, Sano remains unfazed. It's been a week since Miroku-san came to his house, and she continues her relentless efforts to frighten him. The unusual circumstance of a high schooler like Sano being engaged to an otherworldly creature. It was 40 years ago, since Miroku's origin as a cultural phenomenon during the Showa era. In 1979, she became a source of fear that persisted for 41 years, an urban legend known to everyone, whether young or old. She held the title of the Queen of Folklore, recognized as the slit-mouthed woman. But presently, she is perceived as just a rumor in modern times, especially with the advent of social media. And because of that, she ended up committing with a guy like him. She was born from a rumor spread by a priest. If the whispers die out or lose credibility, the existence of urban legend is also threatened. She ponders for the last 40 years, how many times has she disappeared? To prolong her existence, she has taken steps. In this universe, families like the Sano household maintain the tradition of marrying the heads of their family to mythical monsters, keeping urban legends alive. Koichi is angry with her description of the Sano family. He forbids her to disrespect her husband. She is pissed off with him saying the word marry. She told him that they are not married yet and that it wasn't his age to get married. Moreover, she did not like this marriage contract. No matter how special the Sano family is, Miroku-san wants to scare people and make them scream with terror without external help. She envisions hearing the deafening screams every day. But she is not trying to scare Koichi like that, but it's part of the contract. He nonchalantly remarks, "What agreement?" She calls him out for playing dumb. It was Miroku's contract with the Sano family. If she fails to scare Koichi before he turns 18, they must be married. Until then, they live together like a couple, and Miroku is determined to break the contract. He questions her resistance to the marriage, leading to her revelation of multiple reasons. She rejects the idea of a political marriage and prefers regaining her powers independently. She believes that a union between a regular human and an urban legend is destined for trouble. Furthermore, it's not Sano's age to get married as he is just 17. She hopes for everything to go as planned. Sano, worried about her, reaches out to touch her hand, but she pulls away, expressing disgust at his behavior. However, he confesses that he likes her, leaving her stunned and dismissing it as another one of his jokes. Koichi decides to win Miroku and earn her love in the year leading up to his birthday, adding more to her shock. He says, "I'll be trying to get you to like me," and that he is granting her the freedom, within reason, to express herself verbally. He remarks, "Let's see if you fail to scare me or if I lose in love." He promises the year to be full of intrigue. He chuckles and concludes, "Nice to meet you, slit-mouthed woman Miroku-san," leaving her speechless. The narrative unfolds the tale of a temporary married life with a slit-mouthed woman. The next day, Miroku goes searching for an interesting place for her next scare and discovers a shed with low lighting. She gets the vibe she's looking for, hoping that the perfect atmosphere will be what finally freaks out that guy. Miroku is distracted planning the ambush when Koichi himself creeps up behind her with a demon mask. She shouts at him, "Oh my God, what the hell do you think you are doing?" He tells her that he overheard her plan to frighten him, surprising her. Fuming with anger, she ponders how she has enough power to scare him. She is determined to end this contract with her future spouse. Koichi teases her, saying she failed again, pointing to the other masks hung around the shed. He explains that this space is dedicated to his collection of antiques and artworks. It's his hobby and maybe the reason he wasn't afraid when her jaw fell off. Miroku insists that she isn't scared, and her jaw-dropping was just a coincidence. But she still doesn't know how he stood there so casually when any sane person would have run for the hills. He tells her he loves her no matter how she looks, leaving her completely speechless. She is surprised that while she is trying to scare him, he is saying nonsense. He says that he will conquer her heart. In the middle of his speech, she realizes that her supply of thread has nearly run out. She uses it to tie up her mouth so that she can go out in public without attracting attention, which makes it pretty essential. When Koichi asks, Miroku responds that she prefers having the slit mouth, but given the problems it causes, she feels that she has to keep it shut, even if it's a hassle. She quickly gets irritated with all his questioning and confronts him, asking if he has an issue since he's complaining so much. He takes the opportunity to tell her that no matter if it's torn or sewn, he always thinks she looks beautiful and immediately makes her blush again. It was the first time someone called her beautiful. But Koichi is also a little concerned. She's literally sewing her skin. Doesn't that hurt? After stuttering a bit, she says it isn't painful, so Koichi asks if he can touch it. She agrees since her body is totally different from humans, and she won't be able to feel a thing. At least that's what she thinks. When he rests a hand on her cheek and puts his finger to her lips, she undeniably experiences it, her eyes widening like spotlights, and she starts blushing again. He asks her if she felt his finger touching her. She was totally speechless. After recovering from embarrassment, she tells him that living together doesn't mean that he has the right to do anything. Miroku labels him as a pervert. Koichi, not wanting to be perceived as an entirely jerk, offers an apology and clarifies that only his finger made contact with her. When Miroku realizes her overreaction, she sort of slides on the floor. She is too embarrassed to bid farewell. He gets up to leave. While walking back, he reflects on what happened and clenches his fist in disappointment. Meanwhile, Miroku is feeling sad, thinking that it was not the atmosphere she had in mind. That night, Miroku dreams about their interaction, but before it can become intense, she wakes up frustrated, unable to comprehend why Koichi has such an impact on her, saying objective things both in real life and in her dreams. In her experience with humans, especially during the days when she was most feared, people were always afraid of creatures like her. However, the first time she met Koichi, he simply smiled at her. She was thinking after everything that happened, he was surely making fun of her. Deep in thought, Miroku hardly notices her surroundings until she stumbles into a little old lady, Saya, their maid, who appears out of nowhere and scares her stiff. Saya introduces herself and informs Miroku that Koichi just went out, surprising her because he rarely goes outside, especially so early in the morning. Instead of being suspicious, she sees this as an opportunity to catch him off guard. There's a chance that his reaction might be different now, and perhaps she could gain insight into what he was thinking. Excitedly, she follows him, ensuring not to be seen, and finds him not far from the house. While spying on him, she witnesses him encountering a strange guy with sunglasses, blonde hair, and piercings. She is concerned and creates scenarios in her mind that maybe he ran into a gangster, or maybe he bumped into his shoulder. Meanwhile, both of the boys were arguing. She was worried that he must be in trouble. She imagined the worst, fearing it might be a kidnapping. Worried about Koichi's safety, Miroku pulls out one side of her stitches, revealing her famous tagline, "Am I beautiful?" The stranger, reacting strongly, runs away screaming. Koichi, as usual, is not scared or surprised to see her. While Miroku is glad to have saved him, she's also excited to have been able to scare someone after such a long time. Once the stranger disappears, she asks Koichi how he got involved with the thug, assuming he got into trouble by running his mouth. She told him that she was not worried about him, she just wanted to beat that human to scare him. Koichi remains quiet, and as Miroku continues to babble, he reflects on his childhood when he was picked on at school. In one particular instance, Miroku intervened just in time, pulling her slit-mouth stunt to scare away the mean bullies. She must not have realized who he was at the time, but Koichi has never forgotten her face. The way she turned up just now reminded him of their very first meeting. While he's having this super emotional flashback, Miroku shouts, Koichi, and tries to get his attention by shaking him back to the present. When he finally answers, he simply says that he was pondering about how much he likes her, which as usual gets Miroku all flustered again. She says that she was planning for a surprise attack. Interrupting her rambling, Koichi knows that she doesn't remember, but he thanks her for saving him. While walking back, Miroku asks why he left the house so early to buy. Koichi holds up a bag containing a sewing kit and additional thread, mentioning that he purchased it from the convenience store. He notices that she hasn't realized that he bought it for her and ponders that she might be happy if he gives it to her. He remarks, "I suppose I should just return it." As they near home, the blonde stranger reappears and blocks their path, making it clear that Koichi won't be able to avoid him this time. He asks him about the scary lady who nervously appears from behind him, startling the stranger once again. She wonders if Koichi knows this guy. Despite the initial shock, after realizing that she is Koichi's fiancée, he apologizes for acting rudely. He then introduces himself as his attendant and bodyguard named Yuta. Miroku is completely lost as the guy she thought was a mobster has been with Koichi since his childhood. Enjoying messing with him, Yuta suddenly pulls him away when he remembers that Koichi is late for school and not even in his uniform yet. Koichi, a high schooler, expresses his reluctance to go to school, referring to it as a scary place. Miroku becomes worried, thinking Koichi might be bullied or have no friends, but he sees it as a waste of time, as he has to get up at 7 and leave home at 8. His school ends at 3:30 and he comes back at 5, so it leaves him with no time to spend with Miroku. Yuta insists that a student should prioritize learning. Koichi stresses that spending time with his love is better than studying. Yuta asks Miroku to have a conversation with him and persuade him. She concludes that all humans must be afraid of time, missing the point entirely. However, she tries to persuade him to focus on his studies. Just then, Saya, the maid, intervenes, advising him to take his studies seriously. She reminds him of their deal with Miroku, and this convinces him to go to school. Miroku asks Yuta how he is convinced immediately when Saya asks him. He confides in Miroku about Koichi's family issues. He used to keep to himself and never got to know his parents. Observing his affectionate behavior towards her, Yuta expresses happiness and acknowledges Koichi's love for her. He asks her to take care of him and affectionately refers to him as a love bug. He adds that he has been keeping a close eye on him. Looking at him, she asks if he can even see, and further asks Yuta why he keeps his hair low. She pleads with him to show his face, but he explains that he's extremely shy and isn't ready to reveal his face yet. This explanation raises suspicion, prompting Miroku to reach out to touch him in curiosity. Just then, Koichi intervenes, suggesting that Yuta's appearance is due to his character design. Whether it's truly a character design or something more significant, time will reveal. Before departing, he presents her with a spool of thread, sneakily obtained from the sewing club. Yuta nudges Koichi from behind, urging him to hurry to school, and as he is leaving, she thanks him for the yarn, telling him to take care. Koichi's immense happiness is evident as he flashes the biggest smile in response. Mirror, mirror on the wall, more than the fairest of all, hello to the humans and all supernaturals. My name is Miroku, Kochisakei Una. This is how she tries to scare Yuta as she enters the room. Yuta, who is already familiar with her voice, does not get flustered at all. She consults him, inquiring about the times when Sana was most vulnerable and when he tends to lower his guard, as her previous ambush attempts have all failed. He asks if it's some kind of battle between her and Koichi. She tells him that her reputation is at stake as Sano never lets his guard down. He suggests that Koichi is weakest in the morning. As a person who has known Sano for a long time, he must be aware of his weakness. Yuta tells her that Koichi is a terrible morning person. Humans are terrible when they wake up. Today is the day when she will hear his screams. Determined to catch him defenseless, she sneaks into his bathroom while he's still asleep. Anticipating the outcome, she slams a hand on his bed, puts on her most terrifying voice, and peels back his dovet while delivering her most famous line. However, when Koichi wakes up and sees her bulging eyes above him, he hardly reacts. Instead, he grabs her by the shoulder and pulls her closer, almost making the series R-rated before Miroku jerks him away, furious at her failure. Realizing she forgot to untie her thread, though it likely wouldn't make a difference, she might have tried again if he hadn't suddenly pulled her into bed, still half asleep and holding her close. She starts to wriggle and make a fuss as he tells her to keep quiet, warning that Yuta and Saya might come and find them in a compromising position. Apparently, Koichi wants to snuggle with his fiancée as long as possible. When Miroku tells him to let her go, she finds him conveniently fallen asleep. Initially uncomfortable, she recalls Yuta's words about Koichi's lack of family and quiet nature. Seeing how relaxed he appears, she can't bring herself to wake him, so she gives in, burrowing into his side and closing her eyes, surprised to find herself comfortable in his arms. Upon waking up, Sana finds the tables turned as he sees her peacefully sleeping beside him. This time, it's his heart that feels uneasy, racing at 100 miles per hour. Pondering that they share a home, they've shared a bed, yet after all this time, Koichi asks Miroku to eat with him, although she has always declined, likely due to being non-human and having no need for food. He tells her that Yuta puts a lot of effort into making the food. She is surprised to hear that Yuta mixes food. He insists, saying, "It's not like you cannot eat," and inquires about her favorite food. The scene shifts to the kitchen where Yuta walks in on Koichi, witnessing a chaotic background resembling a crime scene rather than his attempt at cooking. He is resolute in making Miroku's favorite food, strawberry candies. Sanma's lackluster cooking skills prompt Yuta to intervene, as he's usually the one who cooks. Witnessing Koichi's unconventional methods, such as smashing fruit, Yuta suggests a more effective approach, thinly slicing the strawberries. However, Koichi decides to take a risk by attempting to slice the fruit in his hand, resulting in a cut. While Yuta tends to his wound, Sana shares that he just wants to eat with Miroku as she never had a meal with someone, expressing frustration at the gap between humans and urban legends. He wants to bring together their lifestyles and thoughts little by little. He pondered about it, and this was the result. Yuta thought that it was part of his strategy to use food to bring her closer. His intentions are more genuine. He simply wants the two of them to share a meal. Touched by Koichi's sincerity, Yuta decides to salvage the cooking attempt with his assistance, resulting in some impressive-looking candies that Miroku becomes obsessed with. It's been a while since she has eaten anything, and this is her first time trying these candies. Koichi asks if he can have one too, choosing one from her selection. When he grabs it, Miroku notices the plaster on his hand from slicing the fruit, and when he talks about what he should make for her next, she grows suspiciously quiet. His attempt at candy seems to have worked on some level, as she cares enough not to want him to get hurt. She promises that next time she'll be the one to make him something. However, when Miroku attempts to cook, it turns out that she is nearly as awful as Koichi. Watching from the sidelines, Yuta is taken aback to see just how alike the two are. The scene shifts to a boy who is shocked upon discovering that Koichi is attending school more regularly. He speculates that Sana might have a girlfriend, but his friends are skeptical. Despite their lack of interest, the curious boy named Inukawa has a hunch that Sana might be involved with a girl from another school. He imagines that Sana's early departures and happier demeanor are indicative of secret meetings before school. Inukawa decides to follow Koichi in an attempt to catch him with his supposed girlfriend, even if his friends don't share the same enthusiasm. Koichi, surprisingly, is the most popular guy at school, with a dedicated fan club and girls obsessing over him. Inukawa and his friends decide to stalk him. He is determined to go into the depths of this because he thinks Sano is a loner, as he has never shown interest in anyone. He was so busy thinking about him that he did not notice. Koichi entered an alleyway, where they split up after losing him around a corner. Just then, Koichi appears and taps Inukawa's shoulder, making him startle. He questions their intentions and the reason why they are following him. Inukawa, lacking subtlety, asks Sana directly if he's dating someone. As the boys squabble among themselves, he excuses himself and turns to leave. Right on cue, Miroku arrives, and the boys turn to stare at her. She approaches Koichi, scolding him for making her wait. He apologizes, but Inukawa interrupts, declaring that he is right. They are definitely dating. He grabs Miroku's hands, asking about their relationship, when they started dating, and insisting on strange details about Koichi. Sano, uncomfortable with the questions, gently pushes her out of range and formally introduces her as Miroku Sano. He grabs her hand, implying that they're married, and then walks off casually, saying that they have to go for groceries. He tells them he promised to make dinner together. Miroku is angry with him for mentioning their marriage. They are not even married yet. He laughs and says if not, then they will be married by the end of this year. She pinches him as they play fight, walking away from his classmates. They assume that she's his sister, as they have the same last name. They are unaware of their actual relationship. Despite majorly embarrassing himself, Inukawa is delighted that Koichi remembered his name, almost crying. He admits to being the one who made the fan club, revealing his crush. His buddies tease him as they walk away, but one of the boys named Kijiana emerges from the shadows of the alleyway as a strange dark presence, whispering after Miroku and Sano using Koichi's surname, realizing that they aren't just siblings, and it is love between a man and a woman. One morning at the Sano's house, Miroku is gazing at her reflection in a pond, contemplating how she's lost her ability to strike terror into human hearts. She's failed to scare her husband. She begins to worry that if she stays like this, he will win. She recalls how he called her Miroku Sano, and she becomes annoyed recalling how he said that by the end of the year, he'll be married. While she's brainstorming new techniques, Koichi sneaks up behind her and spooks her, causing both of them to fall into the pond. At this point, one might wonder if Koichi is the real demon in this dynamic. Soaked in pond water, Miroku settles down for a bath, grumbling that it's all his fault. Hearing her name, she yells at him to stop sneaking up on her. He tells her he just came for a towel. Koichi, dripping wet, tells her not to hurry, expressing concern for her health. Even though she can't catch a cold, she knows that it's her fault because she pulled him closer. She expresses her willingness to accept anything he desires as an apology, emphasizing her pride and reluctance to owe him anything. She tells him to not demand anything weird, and he remarks, "I won't do anything to you until we're married," but this notion didn't even cross her mind. Instead, he proposes a romantic date as compensation, emphasizing a normal day without shopping or any special activities. Miroku considers the date, and as she gets out of the bath, he hears a loud noise outside. Koichi rushes in, thinking she might have slipped and hurt herself. However, he finds her sitting on the floor, clutching her face, which is missing a jaw. Unfazed, Koichi points out her jaw on her head. They come out of the bath, and he stitches it back on. Miroku insists that she only slipped because she was hurrying to check as she heard him sneeze. Koichi, grateful for her concern, expresses his appreciation for her worry and clumsiness. Despite his sweet words, Miroku acts like she didn't hear him. Suddenly, a creepy noise interrupts them, revealing a shadow demon with hands creeping towards Miroku. The shadow warns that it heard everything about the lies. All secrets and bad intentions will come to light. It takes the form of a boy who labels Koichi a lowly insect and warns him to stay away from his elder sister. The boy who made a dramatic entrance, stunning them both, is named Mikoto. He's Miroku's younger brother. It turns out that these legendary siblings haven't had a reunion in quite some time. Mikoto is now trained to become a respectable legend. It's been a half year since they have seen each other. He explains that he discovered their engagement contract and can't allow her to marry into what he deems a despicable family. She tells him that she wrote a letter, since he is a demon, so he was not up to date. Koichi, shocked, grabs her protectively and asks who he is. It makes Mikoto angry, and he warns Sano to not touch his sister. Koichi declares to him that she is his wife and it is his house. A heated argument ensues between them, while Mikoto also grabs Miroku, nearly tearing her apart. Yuta arrives, calming the situation, but Mikoto deliberately tries to provoke Koichi further. Miroku, unaware of her brother's tactics, introduces him as the legend of the walking corpse with devilish ears, known for hearing lies. Koichi and Yuta have never heard of Mikoto, who insists their engagement be called off. He misunderstood as he recalls when he heard Sano's classmates calling him Miroku's brother. Sano teases him, saying he never heard of a younger brother of the slit-mouthed woman. He remarks, "What will you do with my Miroku-san?" Mikoto, feeling overshadowed by Koichi's brotherly role, voices his annoyance and demands Miroku to come back to the House of Legends, claiming the Sano family can't be trusted. In his view, everyone from the Sano family was a liar. He tells her about the old tale whispered among the legends, the humans that came from the Sano family trick legends. They make a contract with them and misuse them for their own will with intentions. But according to Miroku, it was just an old tale, and they may have changed now. Mikoto accuses him and tells Miroku that he is lying to her. He continues, telling her that the words Koichi said were all lies. Mikoto is convinced about it, so he came here. He asked her to think of any dishonest words he said, but all she can recall are the sincere expressions of affection and how he repeatedly told her that he likes her. Despite Miroku's defense, Mikoto is convinced of Koichi's deceit. He remains silent during these accusations, and when asked directly, leaves the room, expressing only a brief apology to Miroku. Koichi leaves the room after apologizing, and Mikoto loudly expresses his distrust and accuses Koichi of deception. This fuels Miroku's distress, as she thinks all the things he said to her might have been lies. She is shocked when she hears a commotion outside. Yuta enters, explaining that Koichi has fallen unconscious with a high fever. He was prone to sickness since childhood. He fell ill in distress without saying anything. Miroku reflects on his attempts to conceal his health issues, and despite her trust issues, sits by his bedside. When Koichi regains consciousness, he feels embarrassed about exposing his vulnerable side to her. He apologizes for the events that transpired and admits that the rumors about the Sano family are partially true. And he has heard that many legends were tricked. He reassures Miroku that the modern Sanos wouldn't intentionally deceive legends. Miroku asks if he lied when he said he likes her. He assures her that it was not a lie. However, he confesses to one lie, claiming he never thought about touching her before marriage. What he wanted was to touch her because they lived under the same roof, so he could not hold himself. Miroku is taken aback by this revelation, but as Koichi moves closer for a kiss, he suddenly collapses due to his fever. Miroku worries about him as she completely forgot that he had a fever. She ponders if the things he said to her in the bathroom are a lie, then will Mikoto appear again. However, Koichi's honest words fill her heart and vanish all her worries. Koichi is sitting in the garden as he's feeling better, and Mikoto again shows up out of nowhere with a vengeance. To channel his anger, he proposes to settle things through a badminton championship with 3 matches. Yuta will act as the judge, and Seiya will be watching on. Just then, Miroku appears, wondering what is happening here. Hours ago, he appeared in front of Sano. He remarked, "You lying prick, looks like you are feeling better." He then proposed a condition to have his sister. He knows his sister also doesn't want to go back. He asks him to play a duel. If he wins, Koichi has to call off his engagement with his sister. And if Mikoto loses, Koichi can ask for anything. He can even kill him. It shocks Miroku, who is listening from a distance. She instantly comes closer and tells his brother that she doesn't want to lose him again. She also asks Koichi to be careful as he's still sick. But both boys stare at each other and make mean remarks. Excited by the power a win could bring, Sano accepts it without specifying his wish. The match's rules are simple: whoever misses the ball loses a point, and whoever has the highest score wins. In the first round, neither of them drops the ball for 30 minutes. For the second match, they enforce a time limit. The maid asks Miroku about her allegiance, presuming that she might be supporting Koichi. Caught off guard, she loudly shouts, saying she is with her brother and wants to call off the engagement. Her loud response distracts Sano, causing him to miss his shot, resulting in him losing a point. With him down a point, Yuta asks Miroku to paint his face. She playfully paints matching X's on his cheeks as a punishment. Referring to him as the slit-mouthed boy, she teases him, enjoying the moment while Mikoto silently fumes, thinking that he is the better match for his sister. Despite intense battle, the match ends in a tie before the final round. Surprisingly, Mikoto seems defeated, admitting his belief that Koichi can make Miroku happy. He then invites him to do as he wishes, acknowledging his misjudgment. Observing Miroku's interaction with her brother, Koichi decides that his only wish is for Mikoto to use the front door on his next visit. He always appears from the crack like an insect, which startles him. Mikoto asks again if that's his only wish. Koichi firmly says that he won't let Miroku go, and he will make Mikoto accept their marriage contract. He won't accept it easily, but for now, he says that he will monitor humans more closely. Lastly, Mikoto apologizes for the trouble he's caused before leaving. And to everyone's surprise, Koichi didn't even get a chance to voice any complaint. Miroku's happiness shines through, perhaps indicating her wish for the two to reconcile. The next day at school, Mikoto returns as a transfer student, continually glancing at Koichi while introducing himself, hinting at potential trouble ahead. Miroku, once a feared legend, is now a changed woman. Mikoto witnessed her dwindling confidence and asked her to go home as it was the bull hour. A tale turned into a terrifying legend, a dignified and noble figure standing stock still. Mikoto was sure that things would always remain like this and never change. In the present, as Miroku tries to scare Koichi by screaming, she is left shocked after getting compliments that she is looking pretty. He tells her that her face is pretty so that he doesn't get scared. With a surprising tone, she asks him to say it again. He admits that looking at her face makes him happy. She is now a changed woman, though she interprets compliments as insults, feeling she's lost her edge. It pissed Miroku off. Mikoto, who was listening from far, comes near her, assuring her that her face is still the scariest. While their deranged conversation is going on, Yuta asks Koichi, "How did it turn out?" He confidently replies, 12 wins, 0 losses. Amazingly, Mikoto shows up every day to play. They look at the siblings and Miroku remarks that she'll do her best. Now that she thinks about it, this guy interacts with legends more than usual, so he is not going to get scared so easily. It made Mikoto more concerned as he looked at his sister. He asks Koichi to get scared of his sister, as she is a slit-mouthed woman. He suggests he to teach Miroku some good tricks to scare him, and he will get scared if she really pulls it off. They ask Yuta to suggest a strategy to frighten Koichi. He advises them to do something off the mark beyond simple jump scares. She can talk normally to him, but she can add an element of fear. Miroku, intrigued, asks Koichi what he fears. Instead, he questions her about what she was afraid of, and she reluctantly admits a fear of dogs. Because her first interaction with dogs was scary, he runs after teasing her about her fear of dogs. Mikoto, who is looking from a distance, is glad to see her sister happy. He knows that one day Koichi will get scared of her, but he cannot picture it now. Because his sister hasn't grown weaker, it's just she hasn't shown her full potential yet. He thinks that they will never know what Koichi is afraid of. The tension builds up for their first date. Nervous, Miroku seeks fashion advice from her famous friend, Mary. She tells her about the date and her confusion about attire. Mary seems surprised, but Miroku tells her that it's the payment of a debt. Mary reminds her of her disagreement about the engagement. Miroku tells her that still a year is left in their marriage, but as a legend she has lived more than 2 eras, for her years pass like a blink. Mary dismisses her concerns, reminding her of her legendary status. And it was not for her to worry about what humans wear. She decides to stay true to herself in her usual dressing style. She always felt that something told her she was about to disappear, a sensation that abruptly vanished. A mysterious power named Faith was significant for them, the urban legends. Their soul stemmed from it. It was a product of the humans, the Sano family, caring for them across generations. They did so because of the belief that rumors passed down through families were the strongest. Despite this, she had no desire to marry solely for that reason. Hence, she didn't think she'd fade away. Reflecting on it, she talks with Koichi daily, so she thinks that she won't fade away. Mikoto and Mary frequently cautioned her about the Sano family. Their wealth, however, had no bearing on their existence as legends. Moreover, Koichi appeared quite ordinary. His mere humanity didn't concern her. She is certain that whatever he'll wear the next day, apart from his usual uniform, will be normal in her mind's eye. Since they met, he's worn the same black turtleneck every day. Expecting nothing different, she checks his wardrobe and finds an entire rack of identical black turtlenecks. As Koichi returns, Yuta asks him about being late. He got late because he was showing the sides of the school to Mikoto. Then he inquires about Miruko as he wants to spend all his time with her now. She was on the 2nd floor. As he enters the room, he finds her stuck inside one of his sweaters. In this amusing moment, she expresses concerns about her weight due to recent candy consumption, wondering if urban legends can gain weight. Koichi, entertained by the sight, initially laughs, finding her predicament cute. Hovering closer, he opts for a forehead kiss, revealing his usual hesitance. He remarks, "It's about time. You've fallen in love with me." He planned to kiss her after their marriage, but he kissed her even before their first date. It was quite different. He was unable to look in her eyes. During their subsequent date, Miroku's embarrassment about the kiss makes her unable to face Koichi. He is also nervous, and now he's worrying that she hates him. This is going to be awkward. Luckily, the theme park proves to be a good distraction. Miroku has never been on a roller coaster before, and it turns out she really likes them. But it's the haunted house that really captures her attention. When they discover a load of traumatized visitors emerging from the attraction, she is keen to go inside. The haunted house is more like a standing cinema, and once they're in, it's easy to be distracted, especially by this one girl wearing bunny ears who is trying to take pictures of the screen. Mirka wonders after seeing the girl if these kinds of humans exist. Koichi buys a bunny headband for her too. She seems to like them all, so he buys many of them. They enter the haunted house. She is surprised at what kind of place this is that humans are running and screaming. She sees a girl taking pictures and disturbing other people. Miroku feels more confident in this kind of atmosphere, so she walks up to the annoying girl with half her mouth unstitched and asks her to stop distracting the other visitors. Clearly, Miroku hasn't lost all her power just yet, because the girl is so terrified she drops her phone and obeys, probably traumatized for life. Well, at least now we know if the whole urban legend thing doesn't work out, she would make a great movie theater attendant. A few minutes later, the other visitors are rushing out crying and screaming, while Koichi and Miroku are hardly even shaken. Once the awkwardness has worn off, time flies by, and before long, it's lunchtime. The suggestion of candy and sweets gets her immediately excited, so Koichi wanders off to get some while she's waiting, glad that they can talk normally. Recognizing Miroku Inukawa, the kid from Koichi's class who is totally obsessed with him, tries to talk to her. His usual pals, Saruta-kun and Kijiyama, are there too, chatting with Koichi in the line to buy lunch. Inukawa offers Miroku a very flustered apology for the other day when he was practically interrogating her about her relationship and invading her personal space. She responds that he doesn't need to worry about it, and asks him to come and sit down beside her, since he's been yelling all of this from a distance like a total psycho. Honestly, this kid just gets weirder and weirder every time we see him. He reveals that he met her brother at school. Mikoto scolded them when they talked about Koichi and Miroku being siblings. He finally sets the kids straight about the relationship between them. But if the two of them are going out, Inukawa asks how come he said her last name was Sano when they first met. Miroku reluctantly admits that they're engaged, just in time for Koichi and others to show up behind them. He is touched to hear her finally admit the truth since she's never really acknowledged their engagement out loud before. A very flustered Miroku tries to take back what she said, but he grabs her hand and places a gentle kiss on her palm, which sets her up pretty immediately. In the background of this very private moment, the three boys are holding their food and just kind of watching. At least Inukawa's friends have the good sense to drag him away before he can do any more damage, leaving the two lovebirds to eat in peace. Koichi made a grand gesture by giving Miroku a bag of candy and donuts, but what truly delighted her was when he presented a lollipop, claiming that it was the last one from the store and specifically for her. He playfully exaggerated how much effort it took to acquire it just to witness Miroku openly acknowledge their engagement. It embarrassed her, but she eventually admits that she had a good time and thanks him for the day, despite speaking with her mouth full of food. After that, they went shopping to buy some gifts before going home. Their first date was a success. We see Koichi peacefully sitting in his room when Mikoto suddenly appears with a scary face. Not even a little fazed, he tells him that if he's looking for his sister, she's not at home. She made a promise a long time ago that she would visit her terrifying friend sometime. After the success of her initial date, Miroku felt it was time to visit her other legendary friends. Where do three urban legends choose to gather? They meet at an abandoned lakeside, near some old railway tracks, surrounded by shadows and ruins. The friends she's meeting are Viola, a busty white-haired woman who is very keen to hear about some of the saucier details of the date, and Mary, a little doll known as the girl on the phone who is much more serious about the whole affair. Miroku tries to clarify things, mentioning that their outing mainly involved casual stroll and sharing meals. However, Mary sees through her explanation, pointing out that considering they've been living together, dating, and even sharing a bed, it's quite evident that there's more to their relationship. Mary emphasizes that such intimacy and closeness aren't typically shared unless there are genuine feelings involved. Viola tells Miroku she should just give in to that scaring him thing already. She resists, saying, "I am Miroku, the slit-mouthed woman, fear incarnated, with the sole purpose of scaring humans." She swore to scare that guy, no matter what. Viola comes out of nowhere and tells her to marry Koichi. She says if she keeps going on like that, she'll lend her a hand. She asks her if she hates him, but Miroku denies it. Viola then questions if she loves him, and she responds, of course not. However, she then asks, would it be okay if she married Koichi instead? Miroku is taken aback. Mary intervenes, telling Viola not to joke, but she has made her point. Miroku seems uneasy about someone else marrying Koichi, indicating some level of feelings for him. As an apology for the jest, Viola offers to teach her how to truly scare Koichi without relying on her slit mouth. When Miroku returns from her visit, she tries out what Viola taught her by grabbing Koichi from behind and whispering in his ear. The stunt doesn't turn out as terrifying as she expected. Instead, it becomes awkward, and when she realizes that it hasn't worked, she storms off, yelling at him to hide her embarrassment. After she walked away, he found himself standing there, heart pounding like a drum, absent-mindedly rubbing the spot where she had whispered against him. He spent the rest of the day sweating like crazy. It seems Viola's scare tactic might have had more of an impression than Miroku realized. On the other side, Viola is waiting for Mikoto. She asks him how it went, whether it was effective or failed. The following day, Miroku attempts to reciprocate Koichi's gesture by cooking for him. She sought Yuta's help to make rice dongos, and so far she's doing much better than her fiancé. Not that it's a difficult feat. Koichi's last kitchen endeavor resulted in a mess resembling a scene from a horror film. Although Yuta has practically booked both their presences, he finds it endearing that she's making the effort. However, when he questions if this means she's given up on scaring him, Miroku clarifies that it's more like taking a break. Besides, Koichi has exams coming up, and she doesn't want to freak him out while he's working on his studies. Not that she's been particularly good at freaking him out any of the other times she's tried. When their cooking session comes to an end, Miroku expresses her gratitude to him for his assistance, complimenting him as an excellent housekeeper. However, Uda humbly corrects her, clarifying that he isn't a housekeeper. Initially arriving at the Sano household as Koichi's bodyguard, he gradually took on additional household responsibilities, all for the sake of his young master's well-being. Admitting he wasn't adept at first, he credits his wife for teaching him how to cook. Uds, despite looking youthful, surprisingly wears a wedding ring, which shocks Miroku when he reveals it to her. Taken aback, she rushes into Koichi's room, exclaiming in surprise and asking if he is aware of the bodyguard's marital status. Koichi tells her that he knows about Yuda's marriage. She then asks him about his wife. He avoids her inquiries, suggesting her to directly ask Yuda herself. Spotting the rice dongos she made, Miroku explains their study snacks for him, though he seems more focused on tidying up than studying. While he's arranging his bookshelf, she notices a few specks of dust at the back of his head, absent-mindedly picking them out and savoring the sensation of his hair between her fingers. She wonders how his hair is so soft, maybe because of his diet. She remembers Mikoto's hair was not that and was also damaged from the front. When she realizes what she's done, she steps back and apologizes quickly. He dashes out telling her to go ahead. He'll get tea. She doesn't notice, but when she walks away, Sano is a mess behind her, deeply flustered by the feeling of her hands in his hair. Because of Miroku's inadvertent interaction, Koichi experiences a peculiar dream the following morning. In his dream, a massive fish head named Pieces stands between two versions of Miroku, one with her mouth zipped shut and the other with it wide open. The fish head inquires which of the two has developed feelings for Koichi, and he responds that it's both. Suddenly, one Miroku grabs him from behind while the other approaches him closely, causing his head to throb intensely. He awakens just before the anticipated kiss. At the same time as Saya, the housemaid arrives to wake him a little shaken by the dream. Miroku appears to be gaining control over her powers. For the first time in a while, she can open and seal up her slit mouth without using the thread she usually relies on. Although she can't maintain it for long, she seems delighted and even voices aloud that she can't let Koichi find out about this. Unfortunately, he's standing in the doorway. She quickly comes towards him and asks if he had his breakfast, but he has 2 tests in his school, so is in a hurry. He refuses for breakfast even after her insisting too much. He leaves for school, leaving Ruko in surprise. During his tests at school that day, he can hardly concentrate as his head is so wrapped up in thoughts about Miroku. Without realizing it, she's making him fall more and more in love with her, and he's beginning to wonder if it's on purpose. He's so distracted that he doesn't even notice the bell going at the end of the test or Mikoto walking up to him. Observing his distraction, Mikoto inquires if something's bothering him. Koichi admits he used to comprehend Miroku's thoughts easily but now feels clueless about her intentions and is uncertain how to respond. Mikoto, unfamiliar with the intricacies of such relationships, asks him to call his sister for advice. Before Koichi can voice any objection, the phone is already ringing and Miroku answers. She asks him if she can borrow his clothes for some time. Upon asking, she informs him that she was sitting outside to take a sunbath. She was lost in deep thoughts when she tumbled into the pond again, prompting him to burst into laughter, easing his tension. He confesses his fondness for her, saying that he likes her. Although not the first time he's expressed it, Miroku responds typically, blushing and feeling embarrassed, putting him further at ease. Rejuvenated by their conversation, he departs to meet her. He thanks Mikoto, who trails behind, but there's a surprise waiting outside the classroom. Inukawa, Saruta-kun, and Kijiyama, members of the Koichi fan club, inquire about Mikoto's discussion with Koichi and the nature of their relationship. Mikoto doesn't answer, but he does somehow let slip that they played a lot of games together, like badminton and Go. He leaves out the fact that they are all in vicious competition for his sister's marriage, but the boys are so jealous they don't even question it. They invite him to play with them sometimes and wander off, leaving Mikoto to pick up his stuff from his locker alone in the hallway. He grows suspicious when Koichi unexpectedly appears, suggesting they walk home together. Given their distant relationship, he swiftly senses something amiss and realizes this is not the real Sano. He asks the pretender what they're doing, and the fake Koichi responds that he could ask the same thing. It was this person who gave him the truth about the Sano family's reputation, but Mikoto is still hanging around and even spending time with Koichi with that uniform on. He also jokes that Mikoto looks more like a human than a legend and calls him irritating while lunging at him with his knife. The following day at school, Koichi's class is preparing for their final semester test, but there's an inexplicably empty desk. Koichi doesn't have to ponder Mikoto's absence for long. He receives a call from an unknown number, which turns out to be Mikoto using Mary's phone. Urgently, he informs Koichi that he must rush home. Miroku is in peril. At home, she is helping Saya when she sees an old family album of the Sano family. She hasn't met with his parents, but she talked to them via phone. His parents were really energetic. She sees a childhood picture of Koichi that is really cute. Saya asks if he is still cute, and she tells Miroku about how much Koichi loves her. Miroku notices a picture of all the maids in the same uniforms and hairstyles. She wonders if Saya-san is also one of them. Saya ignores her question and leaves to dry the clothes on the second floor. Miroku is in the courtyard when she senses something amiss with the doppelganger lurking by the front. Unaware that someone is masquerading in her fiancé, she becomes suspicious, noticing the absence of the school uniform. He peeks from the gate saying, "Hey Miroku-san, I am back." He asks her to open the door, stating that he is unable to open it. On the other side, Mikoto calls Koichi and says, "You must be aware already, but legends always try to avoid internal conflicts, and while they do act just as their stories state, it's rare for them to actually attack a human. It's pointless to do so, but just like how I did in the past, there's a certain group of legends that still believes in that old tale and hates the Sanos in return." Mikoto told him about one of them who told him about the Sano family's rumor that they used legends who got married. He is the one who is against Koichi and Miroku's marriage, and is trying to hurt her. Mikoto is unable to move for some reason, but says that he'll try to convince him. Until then, he asks Koichi to take care of his sister. Back at home, sensing something off, Miroku walks straight up to the gate and gives this stranger a resounding slap across the face. The impact stings him, revealing a glowing, sharp eye momentarily before the Koichi act returns. However, this impostor claims no intention of harming her. Rather, he seeks to cancel the contractual marriage. He decides to disclose the full truth about the Sano family. 2 generations ago, they tricked legends, they tormented them, and finally, they used them. That's the story of this family. He warns her that something bad could happen to her. He continues telling her everything. This tale is not that old, but it starts a couple of generations before that boy. In those times, the head of the family seduced every legend that would later become his bride. He took a bit of a risk at the time to get close to those disgusting humans. It would have been better to just show up as a legend, but he saw how every legend that tried to revolt was locked up, no questions asked. He was betrothed to many of them, more than anyone can imagine. While he got out unharmed, how it went for the others one can imagine. He heard that some legends never showed up after that. They do as they please, they trick everyone. That boy has the same blood as them. Koichi is one of the same. Instead of being influenced, she dismisses him, stating that he talks excessively and that she knows Koichi better than him. This refusal infuriates the impostor, prompting him to lunge at her with a knife. Just before it reaches her, something swiftly approaches the fake Koichi's head, causing him to drop his weapon. Koichi himself has arrived like a knight in shining armor, and not a moment too late. He tells the faker to get lost, and then he just does. Miroku seems concerned that they let the doppelganger get away, but he doesn't care. He's just relieved that his fiancée is unharmed. Miroku can tell that he is really worried, so she reassures him that she is fine, she wasn't harmed, and everything is okay. They hug each other, and she notices his heart racing. Meanwhile, Saya just sort of watches from behind the gate and suggests that they hug once Sana comes inside. Once they're all safely inside, Saya admits that what the doppelganger told her is only half the story. There's a much longer tale to be told. But what they don't know is that the doppelganger legend has returned, and this time he's managed to open the gate. Pretty pleased with himself, the legend doesn't notice Yuta appearing behind him. When he turns, he catches a glimpse of Yuta's eyes and recognizes him as far more than just a bodyguard. That's when it's revealed that Yuta himself is a legend who went by the name of Kurishibe, or the Black Serpent, a creature who could turn his victims to stone with just one glance. Looks like Koichi and Miroku might be dealing with more than they bargained for. They are listening to Saya, the housemaid, revealing her own story within the Sano family. Oblivious to the danger lurking outside, Saya recounts a tale from the 19th century, a time when the Sanos were at the pinnacle of their power. They married and utilized as many legends as possible until the bride-to-be started disappearing. A rumor among the maids suggested a legend known as the Black Serpent was responsible. He used to flaunt his black wings in his back among men with countless serpents growing out of the tip of his hair. You'll immediately turn into stone if you were to lock eyes with him. Born out of the bloodline of the mythical creature from the west, Medusa, and they used to call him Harashibi-sama, as he held a grudge against the Sanos and lived among them. This is the story of a certain lady and a boy. Back in those days, the Sano family used to grow tea patches all across Japan. They were merchants that dealt with all that had to do with this plant. It was the third head of the family, Kotaru-sama, who took over this business. Its humble beginnings in the second generation led to prosperity. He had such bewitching charisma that people naturally went with his demands. He also held good relations with other legends, and he had a daughter. It was this girl. Today's drawing is a little bit different. This orphan child was not related by blood at all to this family. And when it came to Karashibi-sama, he only had some sort of contract with the household. Everyone always looked at him from afar except her. They always talked and hung out. There was also someone else. Due to the serpent's complicated relationship with the Sanos, he was originally engaged to Kotaru. When the Sanos discovered the serpent's true identity, they annulled the engagement but kept him as a guest, compelling him to obey their commands. This included turning his future brides to stone if they disobeyed him. To protect the young lady he cared for, the serpent turned them to stone willingly. They were having fun together. She was drawing his painting. He remarks, "Mrs. is the most talented artist in town." And just when he was starting to have fun with the Mrs. Kotaru came. He compliments her drawing, but she asks him to come back when he has learned to express himself. She says that she wasted time drawing something irrelevant, but she shouldn't, even though Kotaru-sama is yet to approve of his work. Kotaru suggests to them that there's a sunflower field at the bottom of the mountain. She thinks this is the best season to go and have a look. He agrees, "Wonderful, I'd love to see them one day." He walks away with Kotaru and they enter a room where stone sculptures are lying. Since Medusa's legend is not that known around these parts, when was he forced to do this? He was talking about turning them into stone? At first, they listened to everything he said. They are of no use to him, so he turned them into stone. Many other legends are waiting in line to be my bride, and it would be really troublesome to get rid of them later. He asks him to not put much thought into it, just turn them into stone. He asks the serpent if he turns him into stone, what would happen to her? He offers him a deal to help the serpent and the girl. He will give her the peaceful life that a serpent can't give her on his own. The lifespan of a legend is much bigger than a human's, all of them, from birth to death, never age. Nothing but sculptures, am I right? Relax, it's not as if they are vanishing. That's how he ended up turning his people into stone, and he got his wings cut off. Everyone at this house acts kind, but once he turns his back on them, their honest thoughts come out. He gives him a plan that he will make them disappear. The serpent approaches the girl and asks if she is willing to die with him. Kotaru was surprised at the transformation. How did all these stones change? He had wanted to preserve at least some, yet he possessed the power of persuasion. His skills might not match, but if the other were to disappear, everyone would revert to their former state. The snake boy, perhaps that could facilitate an ambush. Alone they couldn't accomplish it, which led to seeking outside help. They convinced all of them to turn into stone for a while. Even facing so many legends, it would be impossible to fight. Kotaru vowed to handle everything, the family business, their contracts with legends, and rebuilding everything from scratch. A claim to reconstruct the family loomed, and he trusted it would succeed with their involvement. Faking their deaths wasn't truly dying. It was akin to escaping together, leaving that house for good. However, even with his power, he couldn't restore them to their original forms. The serpent is surprisingly kind-hearted. Despite an old wound causing discomfort, it was for the best. His wings, cut off by Kotaru, would have only caused trouble. He regretted taking the other without explanation, sorry for catching the missus off guard. As they spoke of the seasons, he expressed a desire to witness them all alongside the other. He reminded the missus of their previous conversations, questioning if she was scared of him. She praised his beautiful eyes and expressed a desire to stay by her side. He mused on aging, jokingly stating she was still the most beautiful girl in the world. Saya-chan, always by his side, had grown even prettier in his eyes. They seemed to share a wavelength, him complimenting her and her him. Their bond remained as strong as ever, despite the passage of time. As the intricate tale unfolded, the revelation about Yuda's true identity as the Black Serpent left everyone stunned. Koichi and Miroku, along with the others, were taken aback, their expressions a mix of shock and surprise. The unexpected turn of events seemed to jolt them out of their reverie, except for Miroku, who seemed to have an inkling about this revelation. She attempted to hide her embarrassment, seeking solace in the shadows or behind objects, her demeanor a mixture of shame and self-reproach. The slit-mouthed woman's discomfort was palpable. Her attempts to conceal her feelings are evident. Koichi comes towards her and sits by her side. He didn't even know Saya-san was Yuta's wife. He thought someone would have mentioned it to him. He was so shocked that Yuta-kun was a legend. Today was the first time he heard the details, only half of it. He asked her if she knew about them. Not knowing what to say, she mutters. The two are amazing, still processing the revelation. He was so jealous he wished they could be like them one day. Every time he saw them, he always thought the same. He says, "I hope we get along, Muraku-san. It's still too soon to talk about eternity."
Here I am.